Happy Friday, ThoughtFLOW Friday. I'm having some lighting issues. You'll have to excuse me today, but it's not going to keep us from having a great chat. Interesting stuff happened this week in the news, and we're going to talk about it as soon as Nikki makes it in. Hello, happy mover. Let's see. Minutes. Oh, the adjustment of the glasses. You're feeling serious today.
What's going on?
Well, I just came from my migraine shot. 60 shots about the head. I don't let them do my neck because then I can't hold my head up. So I would teach and I'd be like,
But that's a good look.
yeah, it definitely helped some problems and created others. Let's put it that way. So
But I think this look kind of describes, planet Earth right now.
No, that's more like this.
Oh, la la la.
Are you guys still having crazy rain out there? Because in Pittsburgh, it's nasty.
East Coast has a nor'easter. It is raining. It's just enough to be annoying. It's not torrential downpour, but it's definitely dark, dreary. It's raining. Hey, Brian. Thanks for driving and listening.
Yes, just, no fist waving while you're driving. People can misinterpret it, and then what happens? Nothing but bad news.
You get fired from your diversity job before you get hired.
Not so bueno.
It's not funny.
Yeah, so as you were saying, the weather has been a little bit crazy. I think it's making people a little bit bonkers.
Yes.
Everyone seems to be a little bit shorter than usual, which is saying a lot.
Just gonna keep singing, but baby, it's cold outside.
Ugh, you can keep your cold. I'm over it. Listen, bathing suit season could come back anytime. If they say,
anytime,
gosh, we're having an Indian summer, I would be like, bring it.
Anytime.
I cannot stand it.
It is.
Well, Nikki.
Yes.
I'm going to let you start the discussion because, well, there's a lot to be said. Please.
My first thing just off the top of my head is, besides the thing that's on the top of my head, can you believe this is the end of October? Let's just start there, because we know how this goes. So if you're a mom of school-age children, or dad, I'm sorry, I'm a woman. I ain't doing that identify crap. I'm not doing that. I'm a chick, and I'm a mom. And so, in Parentland, this is like your kids are about to be out of school, and then they'll come back for like 2 weeks, and then it'll be summer. So in Parentland, so 3 weeks, it'll be Thanksgiving. Somewhere along the way, someone decided that they should have the whole week off for Thanksgiving. I don't know why that person decided that. Yes, yeah, my kids are out for the whole freaking week. So the last week of November, kids are out for a week. Then they go back to school for 3 weeks. Then they're out for 2 weeks. And then we like to, I nicknamed, who was it? Was it Joseph Holmes? I cannot remember now. One of the companies that I am affiliated with, they had a piece called Month of Mondays. And that is what I call January and February, because there's all these 4-day weekends, right? So it's like the month of Mondays. You have all these Mondays off. And then schools have cleverly decided to make the Friday prior to the Monday off like a teacher in-service day. This is nothing against teachers. I am speaking purely as a parent right now. So we have the month of Mondays with an occasional Friday thrown in for the 4-day week. But And then it's like March. Oh, look, spring break.
I mean, I get it, you know, as parents, it's a little bit challenging, but at the same time, I feel like so much happens at school that's just not productive. I kind of feel like, well, if you're not going to be productive, not be productive at home and take the trash out.
Oh no, for sure. For sure. There's tons of stuff that is not productive. Like my son taking the PSAT and me not having had him tested yet. I haven't been able to have him tested for ADHD and attentive, which we don't want to apply it to school at all. We we just want to know how to help our kid like at home, but we don't want. And then I was like, shit. And so he's like, so I'm like, oh, how did it go? And he's like, oh, I just guessed. And I was like, okay. Because it was too much. It was like one of those things where you just have to sit there and fill in dots.
I
And
know.
so,
My son has been through this. I mean, the last time he had his evaluation, the tester called me. She's like, well, you can't really fail this test. I was like, uh-oh.
that's not a good start.
How do you fail an
You can't really fail this test.
But she
Not a
said
good
he was
start.
clearly, you know, just making patterns because I said, how do you have a person that's inattentive sit and fill in a bunch of circles?
Right. And then there's no color to it, right? Because got to use that number 2 pencil. You know, you can't roll out your rainbow Sharpie. you know,
Or
you know,
poke
like,
holes in it instead of drawing circles. Like it is just, it's
I
torture.
I
It's
pictured
torture.
a chef just like, you know, or an assassin, you know, chef, assassin, just roll, you know, so you
Walk
can't
the
roll out like your multicolored Sharpies. No, you have to do it in number 2 pencil. And, you know, the whole thing is like job. So, you know, little known fact, or maybe it's not, maybe it's glaring. When I took my SATs, I filled in my name for the math portion. So surprise, there was no 800 on that scoring. Yes, I literally filled in my name, and it was very clear. And I really like, you know, darkened it, you know, so that they could know that, you know, I don't want there to be any doubt that this is what I was
Please
doing.
don't think I was taking this seriously.
Right.
No.
So, yeah, so that happened, and I was just like, oh, okay, I guess we'll have to get you into Harvard on your wit and charm. Not because I want him to go to Harvard. That is the school that he says he wants to go to. And I'm like, hey, you know, I'm not mad at you. Do your thing, dude. So, yeah, so that happened. And it's Halloween, and my kids are super excited about going trick-or-treating, which is awesome because he didn't really go last year. We did Halloween last year, so, you know, trick-or-treating. You know, with my, you know, I'm like an agent, right? So I get my percentage. So if I have to walk up and down.
Yeah, so how do you break that down? Is it like a large candy bar for every long flight of stairs, but a small candy bar if it's walking to the curb?
Well, Orion loves Reese's peanut butter cups. And you know, he likes the like Starburst, Skittles. He likes those things, but like, you know, give that boy some peanut butter and chocolate and he is yours for the duration. And you know, Aries is still in braces land. And his braces are like an engineering project. He couldn't just have like he couldn't just have like braces, no, because he had an underbite. So he has these 2 flaps under his top front teeth as spacers so that his teeth don't run into the bottom brackets because he had such an underbite. It's literally an engineering project. And he can't just have like regular rubber bands. He does have the rubber bands that go around each bracket, but now I can't just have like the rubber band that's the long oval. No, his is a triangle.
I had to do a triangle. Not
So it's literally like this, you know, MIT engineering.
These kids are a lot of friggin' work.
So he has candy that he just can't eat. So, and
Yeah.
because he's coming up on his 2 years, and he could, if he does what he's supposed to do, he could have his braces off by his birthday, which is December 10th. And so there's whole swaths of candy that he can't eat. So that just, and I do love candy, but Orion has a birthday coming up January 6th. So what we do is, if he's having a birthday party, the old Halloween candy gets relegated to the goodie.
Oh, that's terrible.
It is not, Missy, because they have turned every holiday. And so then we're coming up on Valentine's Day. So we know that that's a candy holiday. Somehow St. Patrick's Day has turned into a candy holiday. So I guess if you're underage and you can't drink beer.
I've never heard of the St. Patrick's Day candy.
Oh, yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. So there's like St. Patrick's Day candy. So yeah, there's like these, no, Sweetest Day passed, right? Sweetest Day was in October. Isn't it like October 22nd? Yeah, that's a Hallmark. It's a Hallmark
I can't
card,
go with that.
But if you have a sweetie and they want to acknowledge Sweetest Day, then, you get that thing too. And then, of course, there's Schmeh. Yeah. Brian
like,
Schmeh. So, and then there's just random kids' birthday parties, and everyone is letting their freak flags fly because they're like, oh, pandemic is over. Like, yes, let's all have a birthday party in close contact. And yes.
Peeps.
And then,
Harmony, even those damn peeps. Oh, Jesus.
yes. And then as you head around, and then of course there's Easter. So blah, 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 blah. So yes. So, yeah, I get my agent's share of candy. And then a lot of it just goes to, I just keep taking some out and putting it in a secret stash so that, it's candy, it's sugar. It never goes away. It doesn't get stale. It's like Twinkies. They stopped making Twinkies like 50 years ago. There's just a factory where you drive the trucks through and they just load up.
Oh, God. My stomach is like, I don't know about this. I mean, even Swedish fish, as much as I love them, I can't eat like more than 5 at a time or else my stomach starts to hurt.
Yeah,
So
of course.
it's not that I don't like candy. It's that if I'm going to blow the calories, I got to do it right. It's got to be on a pastry. But okay, so
we are talking about diversity and equity.
Yes, and not just because I'm talking about it next week in my class, but because there's some really interesting news. There was a story. They have like zombified diversity and equity. It's so ridiculous at this point. So have you guys seen the story about the poor gentleman who, he wasn't cutting it at work. So he got fired and then he sued. Let's see. He was awarded $10 million because...
For being a bad employee.
Because, he was upset. He felt like he was fired not for performance, but because they wanted to hire women, a black woman and a white woman, to take the position. So he was fired for that, and he sued, and he actually won a $10 million judgment.
So she can't even post it. She's like, damn.
She's like, damn. Yeah.
So
did you imagine?
Here's the best part. So I don't know how old this guy was, and I don't know how long he had worked for the company. I don't know what his salary was. The question you have to ask yourself is, would he have made $10 million in his tenure at that job?
No, he wouldn't have made $10 million.
Right.
But there were high punitive damages, as a means of making an example, I'm sure. But hey, he was very pleased with the verdict, he said.
Oh, I'm so disappointed with winning $10 million for not doing my job.
No.
What is there to be displeased about?
Yeah, he was not displeased, actually. And in fact, that he wanted it to be clear that his statement, his lawsuit had nothing to do with being a statement against diversity and inclusion. It was just that he didn't think that it was fair that he was diversified out of the market. He felt like he was fired specifically because of his gender and his race, because he was just an average white man.
So because of his gender and his race. And was he in was this a corporate job?
Yes, it was for a hospital system.
Oh, because there are just so many women in, the C-suite for corporations.
Well, and I think you have to look at it too. C-suite. So what companies often do, and I'm not saying that he's wrong in this, what they will do is they will bring in somebody that they believe that they can pay less, or in this case, potentially bring somebody in, two people that they can pay less,
Mm-hmm.
split the job over two people and eliminate a higher wage position
Mm-hmm.
as a result. So, I'm not saying that there's not negativity here, but I just think it's very, very interesting that, the first go-to is, oh, well, it's because I'm a white male. And nothing I've read, and I looked around, nothing I've read specifically says why he says this, why he believes this. But yeah, I read it a couple of days ago. I started to read it and then I got annoyed. But then this morning I decided to really read it. And hi, Robin.
Hey, Robin.
And it just it never got any better.
Harmony, that's how Misty and I say good morning to each other.
Exactly. It's our
send
term
each
of
other
endearment.
articles.
Bad news.
This is a danger, Will Robinson. Danger. It's a dangerous precedence to set.
Exactly.
It's a danger because we know how companies act when something is shoved in their face as agreed to. 10 million. 10 million is cute, 10 million is cute. And it's a judgment, right? It's a settlement. So am I correct that you don't pay taxes on that?
Correct.
So it's like for real 10 million.
Well, to give the attorney 40% of it. So
Sure. Okay, but you're still talking about, $6 million, and there's no bionic man attached to it. It's still $6 million free and clear.
Right.
And, if you do what you're supposed to do, you can be done with $6 million. You can be like, oh, I got $6 million. I'm done. I'm just going to go, do fun stuff. But it's a dangerous precedent to set because, your point is they hired two people for his one. And we know that the two together probably didn't make his salary. So, I mean, no disrespect to the women who have this job, but they view it as bargain basement. And I know that this is something that they do in corporations where if a person is reaching a certain age, and they're like, maybe they have 12 to 15 years left in a company, companies begin to go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, who can do this job, for less, basically. But it's also a dangerous precedent to make because it's hypocritical in that, of course, white men are still the upper echelon across the board. We can talk about there being more diversity, but we can also talk about companies giving signing bonuses of like $20,000 to Black men and sometimes women, but they're looking for diversity in their C-suite. So when you can go around and be like, oh yeah, $20,000 signing bonus, and that's not even your salary. That's just come do this, come be here. So it's a dangerous precedent to make because now a company can say, we had to pay to have diversity at this level.
Right.
That we had to pay. And this was by a jury. A jury said, oh my gosh, this poor Chuckles, Trent, Trey, Troy, Chad, Biff.
Chet.
No, because Chet is from Weird Science, and he was funny, and that was
No,
Bill, and Bill is.
terrible. He was awful.
I know, but then it was still Bill, and I liked Bill because he
Bill
was the.
Paxton.
Yes, and he's dead, and
Have a moment,
so
Bill
yes,
Paxton.
let's have a moment for Bill Paxton. Okay, and so moment over. So, um, but it's a dangerous precedent to set because now everyone's going to run around and say that.
Well, I mean, it definitely opens a Pandora's box because, we already had a situation where people would say if they lost their jobs, oh, you know what, they needed to bring in the diversity hire. So that's what, I mean, forget the fact that you haven't been to work in 5 days, you didn't wear pants when you went, and you insulted everybody and you smacked women on the ass. But hey, whatever. Clearly you were fired because they needed a diversity hire. But now people are going to try to monetize it.
Yes.
And I do believe that's what will happen because that's just where we are right now as a society. We are in the dumpster.
And
So,
it's the healthcare system, which we know notoriously mistreats people of color.
so here we go. I mean, and in all seriousness, we have to be aware when you get into this idea of, oh, look, they're finally doing something to adhere or uplift the principle of diversity. This is where we get into trouble when people start assigning checkbox diversity to issues, to whatever it is, to fixing their problem by just filling the space with somebody that looks different.
Mm-hmm.
Because you get into that place where that person that you're bringing in is automatically judged negatively because the assumption is that that's why they got the position.
Right.
That you're leaving them in a position where they will be potentially undermined, maligned, mistreated. And then on top of it,
they don't have the
value.
qualifications, they don't have the history, they don't have the blazes, they don't have the right dog, they don't have, yeah.
Yeah. And it is something that we all have to be aware of and, just listen. Hi, Tammy. Hi, Robin. I don't think I said hi. Hello. And then here's another article that I found to be interesting, just coming off of the heels of that one. So we're talking about diversity hires in that last story. But this one is Black diversity officer with decades of experience loses job, underscoring inclusion flaws. He was fired because, also from a hospital system, by the way. That's why I thought these two articles were great together. He was fired because he was, quote, too sensitive to racial issues, and he hadn't yet started the job. He was going to start the job in 4 days, but they'd already decided that he was too sensitive, so off you go.
Oh, no, it was that Porsche. He had a Porsche SUV, y'all.
Well, I mean,
and
go there.
They were like, he's already made it. That's it for him. That's too much. He's got that Porsche SUV. He's good.
Yeah, it's I mean, what do you say about it? It's so problematic, and what's really, really worse about it is that what was the letter? They sent him a 2-sentence letter. We regret to inform you that we are rescinding the offer of employment dated July 21st, 2021. We appreciate your interest in the position and wish you much success going forward. So he already had the job.
He was looking for a house, driving in his cute Porsche SUV. He was looking for a house. He was asking about the hiring of his team, and that was it. They were like, damn it, Jim.
It's worse than that. He's fired, Jim.
Damn it, Jim. You're asking about your team and you drive a Porsche? Dun, 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 dun. No.
Yeah. It's and then so that brings us back to what we talk about. What happened between 2020, find a Black friend and hug them and kiss them and call them George, to 21, get the fuck out of here, George. and take your Porsche with you. What
And how
happened?
dare you look at that house I can't afford? Put that house down.
What happened? What is going on?
Shallow foundation. Shallow foundation. And this is what happens when white people try to. So this is essentially like the only way that I read this is like a white person. This is like, you know, the old nail file in the cake. This is a white person going, I'm going to tell you how to dismantle the system that I've, you know, benefited from for eons. I'm going to tell you how to do it because I must still benefit from this system in some way. This is what happens when, you know, this is what happens when people try to make changes that are not their changes to make.
Well, and when they make them in a way that is superficial, lipstick on a pig, but they're not willing to go deep enough to figure out, you know, what's making that pig happen.
I misspoke. It's not that it's not their change to make. I misspoke.
You mean they're changing the wrong things?
They're changing the wrong things, but it's like you can say, I see this is wrong and I'm going to change it. But if you're really not investigating what the issue is, you're going to keep coming back to the same issue. If you're not sitting down and listening and hearing what someone is saying, the change is faux. And then they can check that box, right? They can say, well, we tried to hire a Black person, but there were no qualified candidates. We tried to hire a Black person, but we felt like they were going to upset the apple cart. Insert any other race into that is a non-white race. But again, it's like someone says, I want there to be change. And then they go, but I don't want to be uncomfortable. Oh, okay.
It's like a very teenage argument. Like,
it's a very
I
teenage
want to
argument.
Be allowed to drive the car, but I mean, you want me to keep my room clean? Like, I don't know, right. Mom. I just feel like you're taking this a little too far.
Or okay, let's make change now. Let's start from right here. Right now. Let's start from right here.
Yeah.
From, you know, October 29th, 2021. Let's start right here and make this change right here. And it's like, but we're still dealing from the fallout from like all of those other years. Like there's still fallout. There's still like debris and ash falling from the other stuff that happened. And so if you just go, okay, I'm ready, onward from October 29th, 2021, let's do this change. Let's make it all better now. Where'd you go? Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So and that's a part of the problem too. It's like someone going, okay, I got it, I get it. There's something that needs to be different. There's something that needs to be changed, but nothing happened before this day. I can't hear anything that happened before this day. But the people group that was affected is you know, they still got their, you know, Band-Aid satchel and their, you know, their glue, their Band-Aid glue, and they're still patching up wounds. And, you know, they're still, oh, I missed one. And you're like, oh no, it's all good now. We're all even. We're all on the same. Yeah, it's good. That is also traumatizing.
It's like being in like an emotional popcorn popper. It's so stressful.
Yes.
You know, when I thought about this particular case, this story, what it made me think about was, thank you. What it made me think about was, believe it or not, it's like, let me explore the Civil War for a second. And I was just thinking about what happened at the end of the Civil War, right? Where it was like, oh man, all right, well, hey man, we're all people. We've got this equality business. And the folks in the South were like, oh, damn it. We lost. This shit sucks. we actually have to walk along the street with these people, and they don't have to step off the curb to get away from us anymore. And we have to speak with them like they're people. And then what was done to keep that from happening, and how the Supreme Court's ruling on, let me not forget, slaughterhouse. It was the slaughterhouse ruling. And what that did was it said, okay, so slavery is illegal, Black people are equals, but the states have the rights to decide how that's handled.
You can't make this shit up.
You cannot make it up. And think about it. Think about it. Well, I am a human being nationally, but in my own neighborhood, I'm whatever that guy says I am.
Right.
And that's how you get around. That's how they were able to get around equality and equity. And that's how Reconstruction became what it was. And that's how we end up with Jim Crow. That was the way they managed to get around the end of the Civil War, losing the Civil War. This is what happens in the micro level every day. Oh, we have to bring in a diversity hire. Okay, well, this one checks the box, but we know that they don't have the qualifications that we need, but we don't really feel like looking for one that's really going to satisfy the spirit of the position that we're hiring them for. And I'm not saying that that's a conscious decision, though I believe that sometimes it is. I believe that people's natural biases get in the way, and they, not so on purpose, but kind of on purpose, will bring somebody into the fold that they know is not going, even if they have all the qualifications, they just don't work with the corporate culture.
Right. Or the culture in general.
Yeah. This is why we can't just say, oh, I'm going to create this diversity and poof, magic. Like whoosh, the fog blows away and now all of a sudden it's diverse and we're all happy here. It never works that way.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And it, you know, again, it's all of it, right? It's someone telling you, oh, I'm really sorry that, you know, we kept you undermined and traumatized you for decades. And we did say that we owed you this stuff. We owed you these 40 acres and, you know, a mule or two. But that's, in modern day times, that's really a lot of money. So how about we just let you go to school for free? That works. Let me tell you how to spend the money and the generational wealth that has been lost for decades. Let me not give it to you. And let me tell you how we can make that right. It's like telling someone who's been treated unfairly, period. This is not opinion. It's telling someone who's been treated unfairly, you're going to tell them what's fair.
Look at the treaties that we have with the tribes. It's that very same thing. So we want this land, you know, like fertile and super fabulous. And there's animals here and it's really great, but we don't want you here. So we're going to send you over there.
But we don't want you on this land.
You can't grow anything over there. You're not going to be able to sustain life. We've already killed all the animals off. And it's really inhospitable weather-wise. But that's where we're going to put you. And because it's an even trade because we said so.
And you've tilled and cultivated this land. You've done all of this stuff to prepare this land. You have not destroyed the landscape. You know where all of the best places, you know, like don't pitch your tent over there because it's going to get like really windy and you know, come over here. Like you've mapped it all out. You've got it plotted. You've got that fresh water supply. You get your water uphill. You feed your animals downhill. You got this all mapped out. Thanks. Okay, now go over there to the rocky, hilly, you know, limestoney, doesn't grow anythingy land over there where the wind just slaps you upside the head. And
there's no water.
There's no.
You've
got to
actually on us for water.
Yes, you've got to actually trek back 10 miles.
To the land we just took from you.
Right.
I mean, this is the thing. This is the thing about it.
And you
saying the
need to
road
be
to hell.
happy.
What are you doing? Sorry, my cat is having an issue.
Only on ThoughtFLOW, people.
Keep talking, Nikki.
But it's also to ask those people to then be not just okay with that choice or that decision, to be displaced very unfairly, but be happy. Be happy that we're still, giving you a place to be. And we want you close. We don't want you too close, but we want you close because you've got other skill sets that we might need to make use of, because you guys are real handy with a knife. You're real handy.
Just whittle some boats for us.
Right. So we don't want you too close, but you can't be too far, because we still need you. Because you're handy in a battle. So this happens over and over and over and over again. And, it's not only disheartening, it's downright, and maybe some people will understand it this way, when people are like, oh, that woman's being abused by her, husband, partner, mate, whatever you want to call them. Oh, well, why does she stay? Well, why does she stay? And it's like, well, because everything has been taken from her. Oh, wait, she has kids. Oh, that's right. Where does she go? Because y'all do know that a man can go to jail for murder. I'm saying men because that's who has babies, right? A woman and a man, biologically. That's what we are talking about. Biologically, his sperm, her egg, right? A man can go to jail for murder and be like, yeah, he did it. Like, he was there. He had blood all over him, and he's the one who did it. He's not even arguing that he did it. A man can go to jail for murder and spend the rest of his life in jail and not lose his parental rights.
Folks. Not.
She can even be compelled to bring that child for visitation.
To jail.
Because obviously he can't.
I mean, he's not coming out.
Right.
For a trip.
And he can go to court and say, my baby's mama, and bring my baby to see me. He could do that. And then you go, well, why didn't she leave? Because he took everything and molded it and shaped it in the way that worked for him.
Right.
And then there is legislation that supports that. And so people don't look at the legislation. People look at her.
Right.
Why didn't she make a different choice? Well, why didn't this Black man make a different choice? Why did he go for that job? Well, why didn't he just ease into it? Why did he show all his cards? And I'm pretty sure if he's been doing diversity and equity work for decades, those weren't all his cards. Those were just those were the cards where he was like, well, yeah, that's like on the news. That's on social media. Like, these are like the bare, right? He showed his bare minimum cards. He didn't show like the wide swaths of,
right. These are just the Go Fish cards. This is not Texas Hold'em.
Right. So somebody's gonna say, just like they said, I'm horrible with names. The 17-year-old who videotaped, no, she's not 17 no more. I know that, y'all. The 17-year-old who videotaped the murder of George Floyd, because there were people who were like, well, why didn't they try to stop it?
I mean, that's just so dumb. What are you as a civilian going to do about? I mean, a guy is being murdered. There's 4 cops there. What are you going to do? People are trying to reason and rationalize. Are you Thanos? Are you going to snap and make it go away? No, it's completely unreasonable. And this is what we do. These are the oh, shit. These are the crappy arguments that we frame when we're dealing with people that we just don't feel like we should give a fair shake to. That's what I'm gonna how I'm gonna frame it. You know,
Thank you, Darnella Frazier. Yes.
yeah,
The
yeah.
17-year-old and the 9-year-old. Yes, they should have stopped
They
it.
should have stopped
The,
it, of
the
course.
kids should have stopped the cop kneeling on the guy's neck with hands in pockets, looking around as if he were the white Adonis. I dare you, you know.
Mwah.
So, no, this dude, black dude's walking in and he's like, oh, this is cool. Like, this is my jam. I do this. I have been doing this. I know this. I am the dude for this. I can do
I
this.
am the dude.
I am the dude for this. This, I'm going to, just give them a little sprinkling of what it's going to look like. And they were like, back, back, demon of spawn. I rescind thy employment. Back.
No invitation for you.
It's like, what do you do?
Well, and again, it just goes to show that very often, even if you have the right credentials, you have the right cards, you can do something so innocuous that threatens somebody to a point where they refuse to just be content to stand in their own space. They want to take your space away. And I don't know if you saw the post, I'm looking for it, but
So should he driven up? So should he have been driving, like his 1978 Impala?
I mean,
I
I
mean,
personally would not find a 1978 Impala threatening.
should he make it bounce?
But no, we're not gonna pimp his ride. But again, it goes to that place where, okay, well, if my credentials aren't enough, I mean, because they were enough however many weeks ago it was when you hired me.
I think you said the hiring process was something like 4 or 5 months.
It was a long process.
Yeah, it was a long
But from
process.
the time he received the acceptance to the time they rescinded it, what could
I'm coming. Don't mind me. I think someone's knocking on my door, but I can hear you.
That's okay, because this is the kind of day we're having. What could possibly have? Let's be real. It wasn't about his credentials, but hopefully she can still hear me because
I can still hear you.
Okay, good. So because I also wanted to talk to you about, and I'm looking at it right now, the post that I posted the other day from Al Jazeera about the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. And
oh, for Pete's sake.
the judge, so guys, if you're not familiar, so the judge in the Rittenhouse trial, I'm going to start with a little bit of background on the judge. The judge does not believe in the use of the word victim in his court. And it's stricken. Like, you're not allowed to use, in any case that comes in, you're not allowed to call the non-perpetrator the victim. These are terms that you can't say. But in this particular case with Rittenhouse, he is saying that, and I'll just get into it. He's saying that the dead and the maimed cannot be called victims. Because the word victim is too loaded. They can, however, be called looters or rioters or arsonists, but they can't be called victims. So, a couple of my friends are attorneys and attorneys to be. And so, we debate this around and around, and, their position is a legal one, which is, of course, a prosecutor or a defense attorney is not going to want prejudicial language to be used. And the term victim is prejudicial. It speaks to bias.
Mm-hmm.
But my point of view is that's an argument that should come from the prosecution or the defense.
You are correct.
If the judge is making this characterization, then the judge is, in my opinion, stacking the deck. It's saying that this person, when you take the term victim away from somebody dead, it's almost like there's an assumption that they weren't harmed or that their harming wasn't heinous.
Victim describes a very particular, it describes that something wrong happened. It's not someone 99 years old dying in their sleep.
Right.
If you're in a car crash because someone was driving drunk, you are the victim. If you are maimed or hurt, or if your car is, you are the victim. The word describes a type of, it describes a hurt. It describes an unfairness. And yeah, and then the perpetrator describes someone's behavior. It describes their personality. It describes their intent. That's what I'm trying to say.
Look what Brian
See, look at that.
from an
No victim, no
no
crime.
victim, no crime, which Brian's been on this conversation on Facebook as well. And that is my point with this, especially considering how charged this Rittenhouse case has been. If you take away victimhood from the people that he harmed, then technically you're taking away the crime. And therefore, why are we here? Why are we in court as the jury sitting here when there's no real victims?
And you're diminishing his acts.
Well,
You're diminishing by, like saying abuse, right? It's like there's an accident. Oh, my kid fell down the stairs and broke his arm because he was trying to, snowboard down the stairs, broke his arm, versus I threw my kid down the stairs.
right.
One is an accident. One is abuse. I absolutely agree with you, Misty. For the judge to say that, for the judge, it also doesn't it show his intention? Doesn't it it's stacking the deck, but also
showing up at being underage in a different state with a weapon and walking down the street proclaiming yourself to be a counter protester. I mean, I think that speaks of your intent. I mean, no doubt about it. And when I see somebody with a gun in their hand, I'm not thinking that's decoration. I'm not thinking that it's a Halloween costume. I am not thinking it's their version of tooth floss. I am thinking that they have a gun, and if they're not using it now,
there's a malintent.
Future.
There's a malintent implied.
If I'm at the gun range, I'm not thinking it's malintent. I'm thinking that somebody is, practicing their marksmanship. Right. If I'm out in the woods, I'm thinking somebody is hunting. If I'm in the middle of the street walking down the road and there's somebody with a gun, just a big ass AR-15, personally, I think that they're there for malintent. They're not there to greet me and say hello and maybe ask me to go for a cup of coffee. That's not what's happening here.
Yeah.
So, again, why are we pretending why are we allowing this judge? Why is this judge allowed to change the conversation before the trial has even begun?
Right. Yeah.
It bothers me a lot.
Because it's not,
Martin.
it's not one thing, right? It's not one thing. It's a piece of, I have a friend who does these insane jigsaw puzzles, the ones where all the pieces, she's actually working on one right now, where all the pieces, the colors look alike and they look impossible, right? This is a piece of one of those very, impossible puzzles. This is one of those pieces where it looks like everything else and it just is a slightly different thing. This judge putting his spin on the verbiage that can be used in the court, citing that something is inflammatory that when it isn't, it's the same as Texas and abortion. These are all pieces of the same puzzle. And, I think one of the things to point out, I'll say it from the school perspective, because I had this conversation with someone and I said, when some of the rules for school discipline, they appear to be ambiguous. Misty and I have spoken about this, that the language is amorphous in that it's left up, the interpretation is too much. It gives too much room for interpretation. And so when you are a parent who is going to take a deep dive and go headlong and be like, no, you can't do this to my kid. no, you cannot assign this to my kid, meaning a form of discipline based on the circumstances. Well, when you have a lesser served community who does not know how to advocate for their child, the ambiguity of those policies actually does a disservice. So everyone looks at the policies and goes, oh yeah, no, this is fair to everybody. This is fair to everybody. What it does not take into consideration is that you're dealing with different levels of socioeconomic, you're dealing with class. We are in this country, we're dealing with class. You're dealing with people who don't have the time to go up and fight for their kids. That's just real and that's just honest. And so you're dealing with a group of people who will still more predominantly be in a circumstance where they will not be able to fight for their kids. Yep. And that is where the unfairness comes in, because the policies don't take that into consideration. And everyone looks at it and goes, oh, no, this is okay because this is fair. And like any person, any parent can come up and they can, what do you call it? Not debate it, but they can come up and they can talk about it or whatever. But that's not the norm for certain swaths of people. Right. So when you have a judge, and so the judge is saying this, and it's like, okay, you have all these friends who are lawyers and attorneys, and then you say, well, is this an argument that should be made from the perspective of the attorney? The fact that the judge did it, of course, is relying on the fact that most people are not as versed in the law and the roles of each person in the court system. What is the judge and what is the judge's capabilities? Who are the attorneys? What is the role of the attorney? What is the attorney's capabilities? The role of the jury and the jury's capabilities. There are so many people who are not so inclined to understand what each person's role is in that system. So a judge saying that, and then a whole swath of people not understanding the legalities or the roles of people in the court system, that's where the issue comes in. And the judge is relying on that. And one of the attorneys is relying on that.
And I also have to think that we have to look at the news that's surrounding this trial as well. Yep. And the money that is involved here. I mean, this kid is out on $2 million bond because,
somebody could afford it,
right? He is the savior. He is the next figure of whatever you want to call it for these people. But, the people on the right that feel like what has happened in this country over the past year is a terrible tragedy. Those people have thrown their dollars behind this kid. And
is it martyrdom?
Well,
he's not dead.
But dies, it's martyrdom. I don't know. I don't know what the word is. There is a word, and I can't think of it. I'm sure I'll come up with it at 3 a.m.
Okay.
But so here we are. There are plenty of financial reasons why, and even some would say social reasons why this case has to go a certain way.
Yeah.
And that's, again, that level of influence shouldn't be happening. But then on top of it, once you add the judge, in my opinion, this is judicial activism. Like you're tipping the scales before the scales have even happened yet officially. It's a problem for me. And meanwhile, on the other hand, we've got 10-year-olds being arrested for drawing pictures of their bullies.
And he violated the bond by going into hiding.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So again, it's sort of like there's one, I feel like everything that's happened over the past year, going on 2 years, I feel like everything that's happened has been like when people didn't create a true beginning of a foundation for equity and diversity, what it did was it almost like slingshotted the entitlement of white people to be even more emboldened to be like, no, we're not doing this. I think there was a moment where everybody was kind of like, being a wallflower and kind of looking around and being like, oh, it's going to happen here. But nothing really happened. I mean, I think that there is some stuff, yes, eternal optimist. I think that there is some stuff happening. There is stuff happening outside of the parameters, outside of the lines. But that's the issue. The policies, what's written on paper, which is what everyone likes to go back to. Well, this is the policy, this is the procedure, this is what's written on paper. That's what people fall back on. And so you can start all of these things and these programs and these grassroots movements and blah, 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 blah. But when conflict arises, everyone goes back to, but this is what's written on paper. And the policies and procedures, the legislation, the rules that's written down, the handbooks, that's the stuff that's not being changed.
I had this very conversation yesterday because someone said to me, but don't you think that things are changing? I said, to be honest, nothing matters if you're denying people the right to vote, because you can have change happening,
right,
you know, holding hands with your neighbors and, you know, kumbaya. But if we can't change it from the top down, then it doesn't change. And, you know, what really bothers me about all of this is that, you know, now we've opened the Pandora's box. Now we are really having the opportunity to look critically at the history that we've been taught, and to go back and start to fill in the hole. And rather than filling in the holes, a lot of people are just like, I can't see any holes. There's no holes here.
No, they're like, it started October 29th,
right,
2021.
Right. Exactly.
At 1:30 in the afternoon. They're like, that's when everything started.
Exactly. And really, and that's why I brought up Slaughterhouse. Because, and this is not the first time I'd heard about it, but for some reason, in the context of that discussion we were having earlier, it just popped into my mind. You know, this has all happened before. All of this stuff is just repeating itself. Where did this happen back at the beginning, which is how I ended up thinking about the Civil War in relationship to a man being fired from his diversity and inclusion position. Because again, if we take a look at the fact that there's always a workaround, from doing the good. We have to recognize that there's a need to legislate the good. We can't assume that the right thing is always going to happen and injustice for all, because look at our government right now. 12, not one, not two, not just the ding ding Marjorie Taylor Greene lady. 12 legislators, people in Congress, 12 people have been accused, not officially, but in that Rolling Stone article that just came out, 12 people have been accused of meeting multiple times to staging the insurrection. How are you able to be a part of a government that you are trying to overthrow?
Right.
And I understand it takes time to come up with, you know, clear substantive proof. But I go back to the police, right? If you're a cop and you shot somebody dead in the street, what is the first thing that they do? They put you on administrative leave. You go on desk duty, they take your gun while an investigation is being conducted. These fools have every vote completely hamstrung because they don't want to allow anything to move forward, and they're allowed to continue subverting the process. We have to change the way the law works if it's going to get any better. But in the meantime, shit trickles downhill, and we are looking at these things in our school boards and in our local governments and all of these things, when if we just sat down and looked at the example that history shows us, we can really, really start to recognize what the needs are, where the holes are. And you can't just patch the holes with saran wrap or even duct tape, because that's not going to work either. You need to reinforce the structure.
Right.
And we're not doing it.
No. And the grassroots organizations that are that are working hard and diligently, they're not any competition for the vast amounts of money that exist in lobbying, that exists. It's just a lot of money. I mean, when you can pluck a CEO or another corporate officer and literally put them in as a legislature, and then, oh, okay, yeah, we got our stuff passed. Okay, now they don't even hide it.
Nope.
They walk right over to the company that, I mean, like the Koch brothers.
Ugh.
They sit there. It's like they make home movies of the destruction that they're going to unleash and sell tickets.
Bought and sold.
So it's what do you do when you're exactly the right person for a job? You are the person. If they were like, this is the dictionary, Wikipedia, Encyclopedia Britannica definition of what a diversity and equity person should be. What do you do when you're exactly the right person and you're still wrong?
You keep going. You go somewhere else to keep going. And, isn't that what it is? How many times have you been turned out for a job that you should have had? We get used to it. We get used to it. Women, anybody in another group has experienced it over and over again. And if somebody tells me the white men are now the other, you should probably just
No, they're not.
They're
not. And
we can't have this conversation. And I know, and the reason why I say that is because I know that's the way it's being framed right now. They're the most persecuted people on the planet, the flat planet. But anyway, yeah. So what do? You just keep going. But at the same time, as people continue to just keep going, nothing ever changes. It can't change.
No, I can't. I'm just going to jump back to phrases that describe disenfranchised groups of people, othered people. Phrases that are used, words that are used, be clear. They're not catchphrases. They are words that are used in to describe circumstances that have happened over extended, long periods of time. Long periods of time. And that is why white men are not others.
I mean, listen, I didn't really think they were.
But it is a thing that is coming up because
clarify.
we're listening to South Lake. I am a little bit behind on South Lake. I got to catch up. I'm catch up on my way back to the city. There were throngs of parents who were calling what they were trying to do in terms of their diversity and equity reverse racism.
Right.
These are terms that people are throwing about. These are phrases that people they're trying, that's a shift that people are trying to make. Look at what they're doing to us.
That's not a shift, it's spin. I mean,
okay, it's a spin. And it's a spin that people are trying to make. And again, if we keep standing there and going, this is not flat earth, people. The world did not start 10 days ago. This is not some weird, crazy Twilight Zone version of Groundhog Day. When we talk about words like othered, disenfranchised, these are groups of people who for decades have been mistreated and slighted and left behind.
Longer than decades.
And so we're not going to trivialize, and I'm not like you. I will not. I agree with Misty. I will not have that conversation with anyone who runs by me and tells me that this white man who won $10 million working in a C-suite because he didn't want to, he wanted to sue because he was being mistreated. That's a dangerous precedent. That's a dangerous precedent to make.
Hi, yes, we do on every other Friday, a midday chat.
A
It
midday
happens.
chat, yes.
Yeah. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, what we have to do is be honest and we have to be realistic. And those are two things that I feel like people hide from because they don't want to take responsibility for
Mm-hmm.
the conversation that has to be had.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a highly qualified hire that you push off to the side,
Right.
when you have the person that actually, if you look at the resume, their face just materializes on the paper.
Right.
And you say, you know what, I'm not going to bring them into the fold. Hello, Everly. And Gwen. I'm not going to bring them into the fold because of what? You know, that's a place where, you know, we always talk about this idea of doing the work. That's why the work has to come from within. That is a personal trial. Looking in the
Yeah.
mirror and being able to say where your biases are, where they live, and then say, why? How did I get here? How did I get to be this
Mm-hmm.
way? You know, it's ugly. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to look at somebody and say, oh my gosh, that I realize I have an issue with that entire people group. And I have to find out what that is in me. Everybody does it, but some people are much more willing to open up and
Right.
open than others. But this is where diversity becomes a problem. You cannot say, I want to diversify this without even asking yourself, how might this go wrong because of me?
Right.
What do I bring to the table that could sabotage my own mission?
Well, and here's the deal. On the flip side of that, there is work that Black, brown people, other people have to do in terms of diversity as well. But what you're going to get is that group of people that's other, they are more inclined to try to look at all aspects and facets and layers of how they have to check in with self, and they're not going to get it right all of the time, but they are already on that path of checking in with self. How do I walk into this space? How do I get my message across without being too blunt, but without being too shallow? How do I scope out the room and figure out who is truly an ally and who just what? Like, there's a whole Jan Brady conversation going on with most, Black, brown people who are really truly trying to be a part of diversifying. So there are inward steps. Yeah, you are going to come across some Black, brown people who are just going to curse you out because you might be that last straw for that day that broke the camel's back, and that person, you just going to have to take it. But that's not going to be their experience every day when they step into the fray of what it is to diversify. If you're the only Black person in a space, you walk in going, the only Black person in the space, and I'm a
But sometimes
woman.
you see other Black people in the space, you're like,
Right. Or you go, or you have to decide, do you want to talk about how to make collard greens today? Because, Susie Cream Cheese decides she wants to be down.
I don't
And
want to talk about that. I don't like those.
okay, Missy. But or someone who wants to, you know, have a discussion with you about the fact that Bo Derek was actually not the first person to have cornrows.
What? Nuh-uh, shut up.
And so, and you have to you have to temper your response because you're looking around and you're like, damn,
But,
okay.
along that vein, there is something I want to say. This is not going to make me the most popular girl in school, but
I still like you.
hey, thanks, man. I think that there's an assumption that Black, brown people don't have any work to do on their own, on our
Oh, absolutely.
so much work to do. When I was talking to somebody the other day about the way the LGBTQ community is very often treated by the Black community, non-LGBT.
Oh, for sure.
It is abysmally disgusting and heinous. And, you know, I feel like when people have these discussions, again, we look only at the Black versus white binary, and we look particularly at you know, just the heterosexual, cisgendered, whatever we're calling it today. That's the only lens we want to focus on. And there's so many nuances. You can be a part of an other group. No, I don't want to be. Neither one of us wants to be that. We've been that way too many times, even when we're not angry harmony. But there's so many facets that have to be discussed when we're talking about things like diversity. Harmony says people suck, and we agree. There's so many assets and facets that need to be discussed about diversity
and asses.
And everybody needs to recognize that everybody has work to do.
Yes.
And, you know, there's this whole idea of, you know, hey, we're Black people. We already do all the work. We're not going to do any more work. It's time for you to do the work. And then it's, well, you guys need to step back and let us do the work. You know, again, I still think it boils down to the fact that if we're going to work together in terms of community, we all have to be doing the work, because I don't want to be doing all the work. I know you don't. And vice versa. Nobody else should have to do all the work either. But the work that has to be done on yourself, that is the work that needs to be done by you and only you, because that's your work to do. You can't ask somebody to do it for you. There's no cliff notes to your personal work.
Correct. And it's about having vibrant conversations. It's about having vibrant and colorful, and everybody's not going to land on the same page conversations. And it's about really hearing, for myself, and I think probably for Misty, it's about being in a position where you can be open to receive and to hear someone else's experience. And to be fair, if you're having a day and you don't want to hear someone else's experience, just be like, yeah, I'm having a day. I can't hear that today. Let's try that again tomorrow. But we know that there are some people who do not want to even be open to having the experience, and that is on both sides. You have to take a look at who you're having relations with, who you're being friends, relations, who you're being friends with, and looking at, you know, birds of a feather. That's a thing. You know, if you have a friend who wears a swastika on his neck and, you know, shaves his head, but swears he's not a neo-Nazi, I'm not going to come over and hang out with you and you know, and watch movies and have, you know, and so, and you can swear that that's not your position. And I think that it's easy for people to say like, oh, I'm not racist. And it's like this really big witches brew, right? But there sure is racial insensitivity. You know, there's racial insensitivity. There is keeping your mouth shut when you know a very wrong thing is coming out of someone else's mouth.
Yes, that point. When you hear somebody saying something that's completely wrong, heinous, disgusting, something that should not be uttered out loud in public or in private, actually, and you do this.
You do your see no evil, hear no evil. Just because you're not saying it, silence is complicit. If you watch someone pour kerosene on a barn and you're out in the field and you're just like, oh, I'm going to have my little pale lunch. And if you watch someone pour kerosene on the barn and you know it's not their barn and they're not burning fields to regenerate the soil, and then they light a match and you don't say anything, you are complicit.
Yeah. Now, we're not saying like go over and fight them, because you might end up with a kerosene jacket on and you might end up on fire. But we are saying that, like, when it's time to file a police report or at least give a
Say
witness
something.
statement, you have to own the fact that you were there, or else you might as well have lit that barn on fire yourself.
Say something. And so you standing there while your friend tells stupid black jokes or stupid gay jokes or stupid fat people jokes, right? You're complicit. You think it's funny. If you smirk, if you sneer, if you stand there and shuffle around and being uncomfortable, turn around and say that's not cool. Don't say it to me. Don't say it to me. I don't need you to be on my side. I need you to let that person, I need you to be on your side. Like, I don't need you to apologize for your friend. Be on your side. And if this is not how you feel, if this is truly not how you feel, then be on your own side. When you stand up for yourself and you say your piece, you say how you truly feel in your heart of hearts, then by default, you will be on that degraded person's side. But don't turn around and look at the gay person or the fat person or the brown person and say, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I'm really sorry. I'm not going to comfort you because your friend is freaking a freak. So those are the things, like, you have to think about that. Don't apologize for people's bad behavior.
Yeah.
Tell them loudly with a megaphone how you disagree with their bad behavior, because that's why they keep doing it.
Because
And
you're silent you might
yes.
applaud and, throw some glitter on them.
And that person, at some point, that person begins to realize that you're going to apologize for them, and it's adding fuel to their fire. So instead of you telling, dude, whoa, dude, you're getting ready to burn down the barn, you walk up and you're like, hey, do you want me to crumple up my paper? Do you need some kindling to help get that? Because that's what you're doing. You're adding fuel to the fire. Yes, CTATE for insurance, _ for insurance. That is true. And it's a hard thing sometimes, and I understand that it's a hard thing, because maybe you're like, oh, then that person is not going to be my friend. And it's like, but then did you write down your friendship values? Did you write down, it's okay for my friends to make racist and sexist and derogatory jokes towards other people? Is that on your friend list?
And listen, it catches you off guard, right? Sometimes you're like, excuse me? Like, I know that with with the past election, when that got the president, I know a lot of people, at least a lot of people said to me, I had no idea people in my circle thought these things and said these things and felt these things. And, so then my question is are they still in your circle? Because, one thing that the continual refrain has been, I'm not going to cut people out of my life because we disagree politically, or, we disagree about a vaccine or whatever. But for me, it comes down to values, because if you're supporting somebody that is wretched, that, from a value standpoint is appalling to me, that from a value standpoint doesn't value me and would potentially harm me, then I certainly cannot count on your friendship, because your friendship, you're not going to protect me if something goes wrong. If we're walking down the street and somebody were to say something, or somebody were to do something, you're that person where I'm like, hey, where the hell did you go? Like, you're under the car, you hidden, and I'm there by myself. And the fact is, that's something that is very, very much an issue. Like, Happy Mover says, this is the argument of not all men. If you don't say something, you are that man. And I feel the same way when it comes to women's rights. Yes. And I feel the same way when it comes to protecting children. I mean,
this is the statement. This is what is so heated about this statement. All lives matter.
Exactly.
That this conversation and what Happy Mover just said is like, so to bastardize, which it is a bastardization, and I say it with all the blah that I can muster. The phrase Black Lives Matter is to say that just at the most basic, simplistic levels, we get to breathe. We get to be on planet Earth.
Fundamental.
Yes, that is what the statement Black Lives Matters mean. So to put on shit-filled rubber boots and trump all over it by saying all lives matter, because the statement itself is a cry of see me just in my basic human form, because this world is white. This world is set up for the entitlement of even just the most average, basic white person. So to then turn that statement and say, all lives matter, takes the statement of Black Lives Matters and basically says to Black people, let me push you down a little further. Because if you're already diminished and what you're asking is just see me in my basic human form, and you slap a sticker on it, but all lives matter. Because we know that that is not true. History does not say that.
History actually says something completely different.
Completely. We have been referred to as shadow.
I mean,
we have been counted as 3/5 of a man. And so to the simplistic statement, Black Lives Matter, is just someone saying, please just see me. Please just see me as a being.
And I think that rather than vomiting out, well, no, all lives matter, an actualized person, or at least a person that's actually considering what the statement is, would say, what is it about this world where we feel like we even need to proclaim that Black Lives Matter? Because if there was really truly equality, we wouldn't have to say Black Lives Matter. The statement itself would be redundant.
This is I am a man.
This is my plant. You can't see him. This is George Jefferson. George Jefferson is my plant. George Jefferson's life matters to me, right? I mean, I don't have to say, man, all plants matter. I say, I spend time with this plant. I rub its leaves. I spray it every night. I search for hours for the right plant food for this plant. I have quite the relationship with my plants, okay? But
I have to be a little more conscious about some of the plants up front that got caught in the construction dust. So we're back here where, you know, these are the entitled plants, you know.
But they're happy, though.
Yeah, but the ones up front, but
yeah, no,
they need a little love.
It's the thing. I take the time and effort and care for these plants because they matter to me.
Yes. They
have value to me. And the fact that people have to say something as ridiculous, seemingly ridiculous, as Black Lives Matter, you should say, rather than, oh yeah, well, all lives matter, you should say, why is it that we are in a place societally where people have to proclaim that entire group of people matters? And nobody ever says, well, of course Black Lives Matter. Nobody says that. It's always, well, all lives matter. I think the fact that no one says, well, of course Black Lives Matter, means that they're still not being considered. That's a problem.
It's not only a problem. It's not only a problem. It's oftentimes there isn't even a pause. There isn't even a moment of reflection. It is a Exactly, Brian. That's a great, yes. And right now, I mean, like if you think about it, Black, brown people have, especially Black people in this country, have been on fire, have been smoldering or on fire, for like 400 plus years.
Yeah.
Like that's the perspective. They've been like, at intermittent stages of, fire, being on fire, um, for 400 plus years. And now, and then you go, okay, we haven't gone anywhere because all Black Lives Matter is the same thing as I am a man. If that's what the sandwich sign was. It was the same thing. It was see me in just as a basic being, right? Just see me as, and because at the time that I am a man, white people were teaching their dogs to go after Black people. They were treating animals better, and not just better. They were teaching their animals. Bleh, speak, Nikki. They were teaching their animals to hate based on color.
Yes.
And so it is the same thing. Yes, Black people in this country have been in some stage of being on fire, and then you know how that goes, right? And that's why sometimes you get a very explosive response from some Black people, because imagine if you're putting out a fire, right? You're constantly checking to see which pockets are still on fire, and then someone comes up to you and like lights another match, and you're like, what the?
And
And
think of
it's
the
that
PTSD
match,
of that.
right?
And
That match could be your hair. You can't wear, it's illegal for you to wear your hair the way it grew out of your head.
the PTSD of that as well. Like,
Right.
so somebody, every time you hear somebody go, you hear that match strike, you're like that. You are afraid. And that level of fear has been institutionalized
Right.
since the start of this country. So then we have to look at when somebody says something like, all lives matter, again, bringing it back home, that in itself is a trigger. That in itself, I mean, for me, when somebody says it's a trigger, it's like, get the hell out of Dodge, because this person's out of their damn mind. I need to not be in an unsafe position with somebody that refuses to see me and mine as people worthy of care.
And then everybody runs around and says, we need diversity in our jobs, in our workforce, in our schools. We need diversity. We need to, flip a page. We need to turn the book. We need to do all of this stuff. And then someone goes, I can do that, because imagine that. This dude's been doing diversity work for decades. And this is his thing. And he walks into a job and they go, yeah, haha, JK. That wasn't a match. They dumped kerosene on him, lit him on fire, and then threw him in an active volcano about to erupt.
And walked away because he no longer existed.
Right.
Good luck with
So
your future job search endeavors.
your future endeavors. Like literally, this is his thing. But he's been doing it we haven't gone anywhere because dude's been doing it. And now one could argue that that was a few steps back, because they just told him this thing that he's been doing from a very personal perspective, because he's a Black dude and he's been doing diversity work. They just told him, walk your ass back, dude.
Well,
Step back.
that are happening now are a few steps back. You look at all these schools that are trying to bring in equity directors, and you've got parents screaming, yelling, beating up school board members, school board members needing escorts onto
Don't tell my kid that they should feel bad about who they are.
Because they should feel bad because they're white. Well, who said that? How is saying that everybody gets a piece of the pie, and if they're allergic to that pie, they get a pie that they're not allergic to, and if they don't like pie, they get another similar snack, they get a cookie? How is it saying that is saying that your kid is bad?
Right.
It's not saying that. And we have to start having honest discussions about it. You're not defecting. You're not protecting the rights and honor of your child. You are protecting and upholding racism.
Yes.
And there's nothing else to call that.
Yes.
And it's not often that I come flat out and be like, hey, dude, you're a racist. But with what's happening in these schools at this school level, and listen, we just saw this happen with Southlake. All of this screaming and yelling and consternation about, oh, don't paint us to be this kind of town. And then their director of curriculum says we need to teach the opposing viewpoint to the Holocaust. And, you know, again, it always rears its head. It always rears its head. There's never a time where it really is just as simple as they want to make it out to be.
Which is fine. Teach the opposing view. Go find the Nazis that are still hiding. Go find them. Bring them in.
So last time we talked about this, and then I have to go really. My son has headshots this afternoon. But so, and this is a big discussion for another time, but I started thinking about this. And I was like, what is the opposing viewpoint to the Holocaust? I mean, how could there possibly be an opposing viewpoint to the Holocaust that makes anybody look better and makes the Holocaust look better? And there really isn't one still. But when you take a look at what the Holocaust was, and then you try to spin it and say, well, you know, it was really, I guess the opposing viewpoint would be that the intention was good because we are supporting purity, because that's really the best I could go with it. So where do you end up when you're talking about racial purity? You end up with eugenics. Hitler was a dysgenesis, technically. He was trying to eradicate. So you end up with the other side of that, which is eugenics. And then I started finding the number of books out there that really talk about this in detail, which is actually horrifying. But this is why we have to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be very, very careful, because it took me a minute, but I did do some searching and I was able to find that information. And how long before some well-intended misanthrope makes this curriculum? You know, we can't talk about critical race theory, but how long would it be before we were talking about something like that in schools?
I think I'm not going to keep you. That's a big conversation, Misty.
Big conversation.
That's a big conversation.
Oh, I knew I got you too, because I was watching your face and you had that, oh no, look on your face.
Because you're like, dang, they will rip their skin off, turn it inside out, you know, toast it on one side, take it to the moon and bring it back, just so that they don't have to just discuss regular history. I mean, the level of effort.
The level of effort to continue, what is it? The big lie. History is another big lie.
Mm-hmm.
Our history in the United States. I don't know what they're teaching abroad. But anyway.
All right, Chica, you got to go.
I got to go. My baby needs some headshots. But everybody, like, I feel like we ended on a dark note. I feel like this is like at the end of The Empire Strikes Back, where, I mean, Han's in carbonite. Luke's
I know, right?
a hand. Darth is like, he's got more power. I just feel like, damn. This is not good. All right, so
it's okay. Happy
week,
Halloween.
We're going to have to be a little bit more uplifting next week, maybe.
Yes.
Maybe. I'm not making you any promises. But in the meantime, have a fantastic Halloween. Also, Dia de los Muertos is this weekend. Well, it's actually this week. So think about, Chella and I talked about this yesterday on live, and really great conversation. Take a minute, learn about it. It's such a brilliant holiday. And please don't wear a costume that would not be ThoughtFLOW approved. I don't want to see any pictures.
Nope.
No.
No appropriations.
None. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful
Thanks,
weekend.
guys.
We'll see you next week, Thursday night next week.
Yep.
Back to our normal, our regular, our usual.
Bye, guys. Happy Halloween.